Most men operate under a profound and damaging delusion when it comes to the power of their absence. You have been told by countless gurus and dated pickup manuals that silence is your greatest weapon, a tool designed to spark attraction and make a woman crave your attention. You believe that by withdrawing, you are creating a vacuum that she will naturally rush to fill with affection and pursuit. But there is a hidden architecture to a woman's psychology that these surface-level strategies never address. When you ignore a woman you have a genuine connection with, you aren't just creating a space for her to miss you, you are triggering a complex, high-stakes neurological and emotional restructuring of how she views you, herself, and the relationship. The silence you think is making her obsessed is actually a slow-acting poison that, if left unchecked, will eventually lead to a permanent emotional disconnection that no amount of late-night texts or grand gestures can ever repair. We need to peel back the layers of this dynamic to understand why her mind doesn't go quiet when you stop talking. Instead, it enters a state of hyper-analytical overdrive that is exhausting, painful, and ultimately transformative. The myth that silence creates simple, healthy attraction is the first thing we must dismantle. In reality, silence creates a psychological friction that forces her to choose between her attachment to you and her own survival as a self-respecting individual. Most men mistake her outward composure for indifference or successful manipulation, failing to realize that the most intense battles are being fought behind a mask of perfect stillness. If you want to truly understand the woman in your life, you have to look past the surface of her response to your silence and see the storm you have actually unleashed. This isn't just about playing games. It's about the fundamental way human beings process rejection, uncertainty, and the loss of emotional safety. When the communication stops, her internal world does not simply pause. It begins a frantic, uncoordinated search for meaning. Every minute that passes without the expected check-in or the usual warmth is a minute where her brain is attempting to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. You might think you are being mysterious or showing high value by being unavailable, but she is experiencing that unavailability as a threat to the emotional bond you've built. This threat triggers a primal response. The brain's pain centers, specifically the anterior cingulate cortex, light up in response to social exclusion and perceived rejection. To her, your silence isn't a clever tactic. It is a literal source of physical and emotional discomfort. This discomfort is what fuels the initial phase of obsession. She isn't obsessed with you in the way you might hope, full of desire and longing. She is obsessed with resolving the pain of the unknown. She is trying to reconcile the man who was warm and present with the ghost who is now cold and distant. This cognitive dissonance is the engine of her overthinking. She will replay your last 10 conversations, looking for a hidden slight or a moment where she might have overstepped. She will analyze the punctuation in your last text, the tone of your last voice note, and the exact second you last viewed her social media story. This isn't because she is crazy or needy. It is because her mind is hardwired to seek closure and consistency in its primary attachments. When you deny her that consistency, you force her into a state of hypervigilance. She becomes a detective in her own life, searching for clues to explain why the person she cares about has suddenly become a stranger. This state of hypervigilance is unsustainable. It consumes her mental bandwidth, distracts her from her work, and leeches the joy out of her daily interactions with others. While you might be going about your day feeling powerful in your restraint, she is trapped in a mental loop of your making. The first chapter of this psychological journey is the transition from comfort to chaos. Imagine a woman who has become accustomed to a certain rhythm of interaction. Perhaps you text every morning, or you have a shared joke that you revisit every few days. When that rhythm is broken without explanation, her brain experiences a prediction error. The biological reward system that was used to receiving a hit of dopamine from your interaction is suddenly starved. This leads to a spike in cortisol, the stress hormone. Her body is telling her that something is wrong. The silence feels loud. It feels heavy. It feels like a judgment. At this stage, her obsession is at its peak. She is checking her phone every few minutes, her heart rate spiking whenever a notification appears, only to plummet when it turns out to be from someone else. She is drafting messages in her head that she will never send, trying to find the perfect balance between "I miss you" and "I don't care that you're ignoring me." She is talking to her friends, seeking validation for her confusion, asking them if they think you're just busy or if you've truly moved on. This is the period where most men think they are winning. They see her reaching out, perhaps with a casual, "hey," or a shared meme, and they think the strategy is working. They believe they have successfully tipped the scales of power in their favor. But what they don't see is the resentment that is beginning to take root in the soil of her obsession. She is pursuing you not out of a pure sense of attraction, but out of a desperate need to stop the internal bleeding. She is trying to regain the sense of safety that your silence has stolen. Every time she reaches out and receives a lukewarm or delayed response, a little bit of her respect for you withers away. She begins to associate you not with the pleasure of connection, but with the agony of being ignored. This is the dangerous pivot point that most men miss. They think the obsession will last forever, or that they can flip the switch back to on whenever they feel like it. They don't realize that a woman's mind is already moving toward a solution for the pain you've caused. As we move into the second chapter of this psychological analysis, we have to talk about the mask. This is perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of female psychology in the face of silence. When a woman realizes that her pursuit or her vulnerability is not being reciprocated, she doesn't just crumble, she performs. She constructs a facade of complete and total indifference. This is a survival mechanism. If she cannot have your attention, she will at least protect her dignity. This is where the obsession goes underground. On the outside, she looks perfectly fine. She posts photos of herself out with friends, looking radiant and unbothered. She stops liking your posts. She stops initiating contact. To the untrained eye, it looks like she has simply moved on. But internally, the gears are still turning. The difference is that now her analysis is turning inward. She is no longer just asking, "what happened to him?" She is asking, "what is wrong with me that I allowed myself to care this much about someone who can treat me with such disregard?" This shift is catastrophic for the long-term health of the relationship. When the focus moves from the man's behavior to her own self-worth, the emotional bond is being severed at its root. She is beginning to detach herself from the idea of us and is refocusing on the I. The silence has forced her to find a way to be okay without you, and she is succeeding, even if it feels like she's dying inside while she does it. Men often misinterpret this period of silence from her end as a sign that they need to wait even longer, that they haven't quite broken her yet. This is a massive ego-driven mistake. By the time a woman reaches this stage of performance-based indifference, she is already halfway out the door. She is mourning the relationship while she is still technically in it. She is processing the grief of losing you in real time, all while you are sitting back, thinking you're playing a master stroke of attraction. The psychological impact here is profound. She is learning that you are not a safe harbor. She is learning that her emotions are not valued, and that her presence is something you feel comfortable gambling with. This leads us to the third chapter, the biological and evolutionary root of why silence is so damaging. Human beings are social animals. For the vast majority of our history, being ignored or excluded from the tribe was a death sentence. We are evolutionarily programmed to feel a sense of existential dread when we are socially rejected. For a woman who historically relied on social cohesion and male protection for the survival of herself and her offspring, the sudden withdrawal of a partner's attention triggers an ancient alarm system. This isn't just a modern dating annoyance, it is a primal trauma. When you ignore her, you are tapping into a well of deep-seated fear. You are telling her, on a subconscious level, that she is disposable. This is why the obsession it creates is so intense. It is a survival reflex. But here's the catch. Once the brain realizes that the threat, your silence, is persistent, it will eventually shut down the attachment system to protect itself. This is known as avoidant deactivation. Her brain will literally start to rewrite its memories of you. The moments of warmth will be overshadowed by the recent coldness. Your best qualities will be reframed as manipulative or superficial. She will start to look for reasons to dislike you as a way to justify the fact that you are no longer there. This is a defensive rebranding. It is her mind's way of saying, "He didn't leave me. I'm actually better off without him." If you let the silence go on too long, you aren't just making her miss you. You are making her hate the version of herself that missed you. You are forcing her to become a person who doesn't need you. And once she becomes that person, there is no going back. The obsession that was once focused on getting you back will eventually turn into an obsession with never being that vulnerable again. Now, let's look at the fourth chapter, the internal questioning and the "am I enough" spiral. This is where the emotional damage becomes personal. Silence is a mirror that reflects back a woman's deepest insecurities. If she has ever felt like she was too much or not enough, your silence will confirm those fears. She will convince herself that she scared you away with her intensity, or that she wasn't interesting enough to keep your focus. She will agonize over whether she should have been more mysterious, more distant, or more compliant. This internal dialogue is incredibly destructive. It creates a sense of shame. Shame is the most difficult emotion to process, because it isn't about what you did, it's about who you are. When she associates you with her own feelings of shame, the connection is effectively poisoned. Even if you come back, even if you apologize and explain that you were just busy or dealing with things, the shame remains. She will always remember how easily you were able to let her sit in that darkness. She will always remember that her pain was a price you were willing to pay for your own sense of control. This is why winning her back after a period of prolonged silence is so rarely successful in the long run. You might get the physical presence back, but you have lost the emotional surrender. She will never fully trust you again. She will always keep a part of herself guarded, waiting for the next time the silence falls. She will stop sharing her deepest thoughts and her most vulnerable moments because she knows they can be used as leverage against her. You have traded a deep, soulful connection for a superficial game of power. And that is a trade that no man of character should ever be willing to make. Let's move into the 5th chapter, where we humanize this data with an anecdote. Consider the story of Sarah and Mark. Mark was a man who prided himself on his independence. He believed that the best way to keep Sarah interested was to keep her guessing. When they were together, he was charming, attentive, and deeply engaged. But then he would disappear for days at a time. No texts, no calls, no explanation. He saw it as giving her space to miss him. Sarah, on the other hand, was a high-achieving professional with a rich social life. But every time Mark went silent, her world shrunk. She found herself staring at her phone during business meetings. She would cancel plans with friends just in case he called, not wanting to miss the window of his attention. She went through the entire cycle we've discussed. The frantic overthinking, the performance of indifference on social media, the self-doubting spiral, and finally, the deactivation. Mark thought he was doing everything right. He saw her growing more and more eager to please when he did reappear. He felt like the alpha in the relationship. But he didn't see the night Sarah sat on her bathroom floor, crying not because she missed him, but because she hated that she cared. He didn't see the moment she deleted their chat thread, not as a game, but as a funeral for her feelings. One day, Mark reached out after a week of silence, expecting the usual enthusiastic response. Instead, he got a polite one-word answer 2 days later. He tried to ramp up the charm, but it was like shouting into a canyon. The echoes were there, but the life was gone. Sarah hadn't found someone else. She had simply found herself again. And in that discovery, she realized that Mark was a source of stress, not support. Mark's strategy had worked perfectly to create obsession, but it had worked even better to kill the love. He had won the battle of attention, but lost the war of the heart. This brings us to the 6th chapter, the dangerous line between ignoring her and losing her forever. There is a tipping point in every period of silence. It is the moment when the woman realizes that her life is actually more peaceful without the anxiety of waiting for you. For some women, this point comes after 3 days. For others, it might take 3 weeks. But once it is reached, the shift is permanent. Silence ceases to be a mystery and becomes a character flaw. She stops seeing you as a man of high value and starts seeing you as a man of low empathy. She realizes that a man who truly values her wouldn't put her through this. She begins to see your silence as a form of emotional cowardice, an inability to communicate your needs or your boundaries like an adult. This is the death of attraction. Women are attracted to strength, and there is nothing strong about hiding behind a phone screen and refusing to engage. True strength is the ability to be present, to be consistent, and to be honest, even when it's uncomfortable. When you use silence as a tool, you are signaling that you are not equipped for a real relationship. You are signaling that you are playing in a sandbox while she is looking for someone to build a life with. The disconnection that happens at this stage is not just emotional. It's intellectual. She loses respect for your intellect. She sees through the game. And once a woman sees through the game is over. You can't put the magic back in the hat. You can't unknow the fact that you are someone who uses manipulation to get what you want. This leads to the final and most important part of our journey, the moral shift from strategy to character. This is the conclusion of our narrative, and it is the most vital lesson for any man who wants a truly fulfilling relationship. The gurus who taught you that silence is the key to attraction were selling you a shortcut that leads to a dead end. They were teaching you how to attract a woman's ego, but they were neglecting her soul. If you want to create a connection that lasts, you have to move beyond strategy. You have to become a man whose presence is so valuable that you don't need to manufacture absence to prove it. A man of character doesn't ignore a woman to make her obsessed. He engages with her to make her secure. He understands that his attention is a gift, and he gives it with intention. This doesn't mean you have to be at her beck and call 24/7. That is the other extreme, and it is equally damaging. It means you have a life that is so full, so purposeful, and so driven by your own goals and values that your silence is a natural byproduct of your productivity, not a calculated move in a chess match. There is a massive difference between being busy and being avoidant. When you are genuinely busy building your empire, pursuing your passions, and serving your community, your unavailability carries a different energy. It carries the energy of purpose. A woman can sense that. She respects a man who is driven by something larger than the relationship. In that context, your absence isn't a threat. It's an inspiration. She isn't left wondering if you care. She is left admiring what you're doing. This is the only kind of silence that actually deepens attraction. It's the silence of a man who is focused on his mission. But even then, a man of character communicates. He says, "I'm going to be deep in work for the next few days, but I'm looking forward to seeing you on Friday." He provides the container of safety that allows her to relax in his absence. He doesn't leave her to rot in the waiting room of the mind. He doesn't use her emotions as a playground for his ego. The shift from strategy to character is the shift from being a boy who plays with fire to a man who provides the hearth. The boy wants to see how much he can make her burn. The man wants to keep her warm. If you find yourself using silence as a way to control the dynamic, I want you to ask yourself why. What are you afraid of? Usually, the men who are the most obsessed with making women obsessed are the ones who are the most terrified of being rejected themselves. They use silence as a shield. They think if they don't give everything, they can't lose everything. But the irony is that by holding back, they ensure that they will never have anything real. You cannot build a castle on a foundation of games. You cannot have the deep, transformative intimacy that every human being craves if you are constantly calculating your response time. It's time to put down the manuals and start looking at the woman in front of you as a human being, with a heart, a mind, and a history. It's time to realize that your silence has consequences that go far beyond the next few hours or days. You are shaping her perception of men, of love, and of herself. That is a heavy responsibility. Do not take it lightly. The true insider secret from the female perspective is this: we aren't looking for a man who knows how to ignore us. We are looking for a man who is strong enough to be consistent. We are looking for a man whose character is his strategy. When you become that man, you won't have to worry about whether she's obsessed with you. You'll know she's invested in you. And that is a far more powerful and enduring state of being. The journey from silence to substance is a difficult one, but it is the only one worth taking. It requires you to confront your own insecurities, to develop genuine empathy, and to value the long-term health of your connections over short-term ego boosts. It requires you to be honest with yourself about the impact of your actions. When you ignore her, you are not just playing a game. You are performing an experiment on her nervous system, and the results of that experiment are rarely what you hope for. They are often the slow, painful dissolution of the very thing you were trying to protect. So stop focusing on how to make her miss you and start focusing on how to make her feel chosen. Stop worrying about the power of your silence and start mastering the power of your presence. Because at the end of the day, a woman doesn't fall in love with a ghost. She falls in love with a man who shows up, who speaks his truth, and who has the courage to be seen. That is where the real obsession lies, in the rarity of a man who is both powerful and present. Be that man. Not for her, but for yourself. Because the man who doesn't need to play games is the only one who truly wins in the end. As we close this discussion, I want you to reflect on the legacy of your interactions. Do you want to be remembered as the man who kept her guessing, or the man who made her feel understood? Do you want your absence to be a source of trauma, or a source of peaceful anticipation? The choice is yours, but remember that once the line of emotional disconnection is crossed, there is no going back. The silence you use today might be the very reason you are alone tomorrow. Use your words, use your heart, and use your character. That is the only strategy that never fails. Throughout this entire exploration, we have touched on the deep, often invisible currents that run beneath the surface of modern dating. We've seen how silence can act as a catalyst for a type of obsession that is more akin to a fever than a flame. A frantic, unhealthy search for resolution that ultimately exhausts the very person you're trying to attract. We've explored the biological roots of this pain and the devastating impact it has on a woman's self-esteem. We've analyzed the mask of indifference and the point of no return where obsession turns to apathy. And finally, we've called for a return to character and integrity. The reality of a man's silence on a woman is that it is a high-risk, low-reward gamble. It might get you a temporary spike in interest, but it costs you the foundation of trust. It might make her think about you more, but it makes her like you less. It might give you a sense of control, but it robs you of genuine intimacy. The men who understand this are the ones who build relationships that flourish over decades, not just weeks. They are the men who realize that a woman's heart is a garden that needs the light of presence to grow, not the darkness of withdrawal to survive. Your silence is not your strength. Your ability to communicate through it, to define it, and to use it as a reflection of a purposeful life is where your true power lies. Don't be the man who ignores her into obsession. Be the man who inspires her into partnership. That shift in perspective changes everything. It changes how you see yourself, how you see her, and what is possible for you both. This isn't just about dating. It's about the kind of person you are becoming. Are you a man of games or a man of substance? The answer is revealed in the moments when you have the choice to either go silent or to speak. Choose wisely, because your silence is speaking much louder than you think. And she is hearing every single word. The psychological landscape we've covered is vast, but the central truth is simple. Human connection requires honesty, and honesty is the antidote to the games of silence. When you stop trying to hack her brain and start trying to honor her heart, you find a level of attraction that is far more potent than anything manufactured through withdrawal. This is the path of the mentor. The path of the man who knows his worth and doesn't need to steal it from someone else's peace of mind. Let this be the end of the strategy and the beginning of the character. The woman in your life, and the man you are meant to be, deserves nothing less. Silence should be the space where you both grow, not the void where she disappears. When you master this, you master the art of being a man in a world that is desperately lacking in genuine substance. The hidden obsession you create through silence is a shadow. The genuine devotion you create through character is the sun. Decide which one you want to live in. As we finalize this deep dive, remember that the most powerful thing you can do for a woman is to be a man she can rely on. Consistency is the ultimate aphrodisiac. It is the proof of value that silence can never provide. When you are consistent, her mind doesn't have to go into overdrive because it already knows where it stands. Her self-worth doesn't spiral because it's not being tested by your absence. And the line of permanent disconnection is never even approached. You build a bond that is resilient, honest, and deeply fulfilling. This is the other side of the perspective, the one that values the woman as much as the win. It's a perspective rooted in empathy and seriousness, and it's the only one that leads to true success in love and life. So take these insights and apply them not as a new set of rules to follow, but as a new way of being. Move through the world with the quiet confidence of a man who doesn't need to play with anyone's emotions to feel his own power. That is the ultimate secret. That is what truly creates an obsession. The obsession with a man who is so real, so rare, and so reliable that losing him would be the only silence she could never bear to hear.